Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. Today is just going to be a theory, a hypothesis. We're going to be looking at an article that was published in the year 2000 regarding the history of Bavaria, the history of Germany, the history of the Khazarian people, and the history of the Jewish population and how it spread throughout Europe. So this is a very interesting video, but again, this is just a theory. So let's get right into it. Today we're going to be diving back into the Tartarian hypothesis. I've made other videos on the origin of Tartary before, but in today's video, we're going to be diving back into this series, looking to peel back the layers of history and looking at how history itself might have been rewritten and might have been retold. This might have been the silent war that is still continuing today. I've had other videos where we looked at the Tartarian piece and the Khazarian piece. But in today's video, we're going to focus on an article that was published in the Eurasian Politician in October of 2000. When we look at the layers of rewritten history, who would be able to reach into the power structures and apply a consensus retelling of the narrative to the point that the truth actually becomes hidden? Let's take a dive backwards into the times of Tartarian or ancient Northern Asian history. And when we focus on the Eastern European connection here and we look at that history, we have accounts that stem from three main sources or articles, being Nestor's Chronicle, Kostler's The 13th Tribe, and Pritzak's The Origin of the Ruse. Through these three accounts of Eastern European history, we find that a key group was said to shape this history, basically forming the basis for the slave trade that was forced on those in the lands that we now call Slavic. This group, who made this all happen, was theorized to be the Khazars, whose lost kingdom is anything but forgotten when it comes to the influence that it had over history. We're told the wily Khazars are apparently risky to talk about, but other forces seem to really want me to share this with you. So when we look at Nestor's Chronicle, the forefathers of the Slavic people arose out of the Roman province of Noricum, which is the exact location where the Duchy of Bavaria was born in the 6th century. From these Bavarian origins, the Slavic people essentially divided Bavaria by the 10th century, fracturing into Ostmark, later known as Austria, and the Duchy of Carinthia. Carinthia itself split further into the Margrave counties, including Steiermark. Furthermore, we know, according to artifact records, that Slavic peoples inhabited the whole region of Bavaria as early as 568 alongside the Langobards, and were almost completely assimilated by the arrival of the Hungarians in the year 896, although from shortly after 568 through the Hungarian arrival, we're also told that most of Bavaria was controlled and ruled by the Avars. The Avars are described as a multinational empire similar to the Huns or the Golden Horde. However, the Avars are attested in modern times as being Turkic in origin, celebrating a pagan culture focused on equestrianism and the domestication of livestock. Once Hungarians arrived to Bavaria and took control, we have a period from roughly 896 through roughly 955 known as the period of the 5 pagan princes. However, prior to this, using the work of Kostler, we discover that Bavaria had 22 Jewish princes during the period of the Avar reign, seemingly indicating that the Avars, while Turkish, may have had a Jewish origin, or rather, the Jews in the Avar Empire served as the highest-ranking leaders of the culture, sometimes known as the Khans, but more specifically referred to as the Kayans. It's worth noting the rulers of many kingdoms of Europe had the title similar to Khan, and Khan was believed to derive from Kayan, which was the title of the ruler of the Khazars and the Avars. It is believed the title Cohen, adopted as the title for the leader of the Hebrew people, and later as a common last name, was also a form of the earlier Khan, or Kayan, derived directly from the ancient Khazar elite. Of the Jewish 22 princes of Avar Bavaria, we have names like Senan, who ruled 45 years, Zippin, who ruled for 43 years, as well as Lapton, Malone, Rapton, Rabon, Ephra, and Samek. Why is this important? According to mainstream scholars, by the early Middle Ages, we don't have any significant mention or population noted of Jewish people in any major kingdom of Europe besides Spain. But rather, we do have numerous mentions of a Khazar empire, which had infiltrated multiple facets of mainland Europe. We're told the Khazar Empire was considered pagan and Turkic until roughly 740 AD, and it was alongside the Khazar culture that a monopoly was developed on the trade of numerous goods which would go on to transform society, mainly in Europe. Essentially, the Khazars, through trade, controlled the rate at which Europe was developing, and this angered many people, including the Byzantine Empire. Ostmark, aka Austria, according to Kostler, spoke a unique yet recognizable form of German which greatly resembled Yiddish. We're told through Kostler, a Jewish historian, that Yiddish was the mother tongue that connected all European Jews, brought forth as the official language by the Ashkenazis. We're told the first language of a united Jewish community stemmed from an even earlier change in language, as in ancient times, Hebrew was changed into Chaldean in Babylonian exile, then from Chaldean into Aramean in the time of Jesus, and then from Aramean into Greek. The argument is then made that perhaps the history of the Slavic people is related directly to the history of the Jewish people, and may actually be one in the same. According to the arguments and the origins of Rus, the first settlements in Russia were of Jewish origin. We're told with the fall of the Khazar Empire, we have a power vacuum that was created, not just on trade around Europe, but also on the home to the Jewish people. Trapped between the growing Christian kingdoms of the Holy Roman lands and the growing territories of Muslim rule to the east, the Khazarian king, we are told, in order to keep a unique religious view, apparently decided to convert to Judaism around 740 AD. Honestly, this sounds a lot like plausible deniability. If we are being invaded by two massive powers, if you're surrounded by two things that will destroy you, would the smartest thing to do really be to select a third option instead of the lesser of two evils? And furthermore, it doesn't make much sense that the converting to Judaism from paganism essentially lifted all of the stress and worry off of the Khazarian Empire. We're led to believe not only did the world then leave the Khazars alone once they converted to Judaism, but the Khazars actually began to thrive and their kingdom converted into one of the leading kingdoms of trade in all of the world, becoming lavishly wealthy and important to the history of Europe. Does any of that really make sense? We're told the Khazar Empire fell around the beginning of the 11th century, and following its fall, we have the first mentions of Jewish people in the narratives of many major kingdoms across the earth, including Hungary and Kiev. In Bavaria, a town was founded called Judenberg, and another by the name of Toledo, which I found interesting as coincidentally, one of the largest producers of airships and dirigibles in America in the 19th century was the American city of Toledo. It makes you wonder why these names were chosen specifically, but I digress. We're told, according to Robert de Boron, the Khazars were part of the bloodline of Joseph the Arimathean, and the Khazars had been the first guardians of the Holy Grail, according to this theory, with their most famous king being titled Joseph. We're told the Avars had come into full control of Bavaria by 741 and remained the sole rulers of Bavaria, although the Avars themselves, mentioned earlier, were likely a conglomerate of kingdoms led by a Jewish Khan. In 791, seemingly learning of the miraculous artifacts held by the Jewish Avars, including what might have been the Holy Grail, we're told Charlemagne began his devastating campaign against the Avars of Bavaria, and these attacks continued for 14 years until Charlemagne was said to have either captured or destroyed most of Avar history. And in 805, the Avar Kayan, or Great Khan, converted to Christianity. 805 is also the first mention in history of the Bohemians. The Avars quickly disappeared from the record, as once they had adopted the Christian faith, we're told most of them were assimilated to the German and Slavic population. We're told all of the Avars did not convert to Christianity, however, and the few resistors fled over the Tisa to the Bulgars and to the protection of the Moravian Empire. Moravia is mentioned first in 822. 822 is also the same year the Avars appear to disappear from the historical record. So take it all with a grain of salt. So according to this theory, again, just a theory, the Jewish people of the early Middle Ages almost exclusively arose from the Khazars, who had been forced into German-speaking lands where they amalgamated with the Avars. From here, the mixed Avars mostly became Jewish, as did the Khazars. The largest Jewish community on earth at that time, many were forced to flee from Avar-controlled lands through the campaigns of the Holy Roman Empire, and they fled through Bavaria to Poland and Lithuania, where they established the long-standing Jewish communities that were founded there. When Jewish traders from Spain arrived to Bohemia around 965, the Bohemians were described as looking eerily similar to the Spanish traders. We also have numerous legends of the Huns, including Attila the Hun, and many fringe theories now exist claiming that the Huns, through assimilation and through modern misunderstanding of different names, languages, stories, etc., it is now theorized that the Huns were another name for the Avars, with the name Avars in this theory being synonymous with the Khazars, and the entirety of the Hun history said to have gone relatively silent when the Huns, the Avars, the Khazars converted to Judaism, thus splintering the Huns from their unique cultural identification that was lost at that time. Furthermore, we have the Frisian saint legends, the King Arthur legends, multiple Scandinavian sagas, and the Danish historical legends, which all make mention of a Semitic-looking Hunnic people, a people who resided on the coastlines of major Baltic cities who were well equipped at warfare, trade, and the domestication of livestock. We're told the slaves of the Golden Horde varied greatly, but a large number of the Jewish ones were transported or fled to Lithuania, a practice which was said to have continued well into the 1300s. We're told the majority of those enslaved by the Golden Horde converted to Christianity. However, those in Lithuania retained their religious freedom and continued to practice Judaism. Lithuania stayed as the last pagan empire of Europe after Denmark, Poland, Kiev's Russia, Sweden, Norway, Hungary, and Iceland had all adopted Christianity by the late 900s. The tolerant reputation of Lithuania, some would say from its Khazar origins, all remained in place well into the 1500s. According to Kostler, his end theory for all of this and why I wanted to share this video with you is that he proposes that the Khazars somehow, through whatever means, inherited the entire empire from lands to lifestyle culture of the Huns, and that they then imported Judaism to this community, which spread as far as the shores of the Baltic Sea. And this occurred as early as the beginning of the Middle Ages. If this theory is to be believed, then when we look at Swedish history, the Swedish moves throughout the early 800s would then become as much of a powerful political bridge burning by the Frankish as anything else. The vast Swedish kingdom was ordered to cut off the supportive connections of the Central European Jewish Empire to the Khazar Empire, basically diminishing their stranglehold on trade. The Holy Roman Empire, according to this theory, was the driving force, causing all of the Jews to be forced from the cities into the ghettos and into the remote ends of Lithuania. Lithuania then would be the last vestiges of the lost kingdom of the Khazars, with the Christian missions being the guise for the creation of the slaves of Slavic origin. Again, going on to further explain the etymology of the word Slavic, we can look at the Golden Horde. We can see that Slavic stems from the root slave, but we may actually have evidence beginning to hit the limelight that indicates that the Slavic people were in fact Jewish slaves from the Khazar Empire, forced into labor after centuries of controlling nearly all of the trade of Europe. The Khan, the Kayan, the Cohen, the leader, whose origins tie back to the very root of Bavaria, to the heart of Germany. But could they be traced back even further? Could this all tie back to the Huns? Could this tie back to the lands of Tartaria? So to put a ribbon on this video, essentially what we are led to believe, at least in this theory, is that even before the Middle Ages, all of the people that were seemingly practicing Judaism from the fall of Rome, they were really forced to do this in secret. And it was only with the rise of the Avars and the rise of the Longobards and the rise of the Khazars that we actually have the establishment of a Judaic section of the world that was able to thrive and to practice their religion in freedom. So I found that to be really fascinating. But furthermore, we only really have the establishment of this land when we have the trade routes opened up between Asia and between Eastern Europe and then to the rest of Europe. Once these routes were open, they seemed to be established, they seemed to be controlled by these Khans, by the Cayennes, by the controllers of the Khazarian state. And we talked about that very, very detailed in the video that I made on the Khazarian peace. So definitely check that out if you are interested. But what we are looking at here is that the origins, even of the Huns, even of this mysterious Tartarian empire, even of the Khazars themselves, it can all be tied back to this secretive sect, this secretive belief that was occurring in the background, but did not come to the forefront again from the fall of Rome until really the beginning of the Middle Ages and the establishment of these earliest areas that actually believed and were freely able to worship. So I'm just going to wrap up the narrative there, but there are so many other little fun facts, little anomalies, little one-off things that are written in the narrative that I did not cover in this video. So if anything stood out to you, I would love to hear about it in the comment section down below. But I would also love to hear if you have any other relevant information to any of the topics discussed today. Something that I found really fascinating is that you can actually see the name Avar of the Avars in the name Bavaria. You have Avar, just add a B, Bavar, Bavaria. So it's very clear that the etymology here is hiding the true origin of where these people truly came from and who they are tied to in this history. And I find it so fascinating that every day we are peeling back more and more layers looking to uncover the truth. So I can't wait to hear from you in the comment section down below. Definitely check out my other videos on the topics of Tartaria, and we will talk again on the next video.